Hey, welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. This is Hallie. Hallie, say hi.
Hello. Hi.
If we laughed a little bit, we just got done laughing at something. But this is supposed to be a serious one. Actually, it is.
Will be.
I'm. This is going out mainly to a lot of the younger guys out there, and anybody also who is looking to join a group. Um, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. I won't call it peeve, but it is an important, um, well, it's important to keep in mind. I just put one up over on Patreon about vehicle guns. The reason that I did that is because things are getting serious. I've heard a lot of people talking about the Civil War, the coming Civil War, and I've kind of held off on that because it's there are certain elements to a real civil war that you have to be careful about. Well, we are now in the beginning throes. Some people would argue we've been in the beginning throes for a while, but I will say now it has satisfied me that we are now in the beginning of a civil war. You've heard me, or you may have heard me talk about the fact that the first one that they call a civil war was not a civil war at all. This one probably will be. And a true civil war is a mess. It is not something you want to be in. It's not something that any rational person really hoped for. It is something that a lot of people have said, well, we need to have it. We need to have it because there's no other way to solve the problems in our society, in our country. People simply think too differently. We've reached the point to where there's not the consensus among most of the population on what's right and what's wrong and what our country ought to be and where it ought to go and such as that. It's a split. We are now fractionalized. We are balkanized along a number of different lines, and I don't see any way of coming back from it. The point of this is, guess what, troopers? We are in it. We are now in a reality that people have simply been dealing with in the talk sphere. Okay, and reality brings things to you that talk does not. And what I want to talk about right on this one is tough talk. I've had occasion, I've known a great many truly tough, truly dangerous, truly deadly men. I don't recall any of them being loud and talking tough and acting braggadocio and saying that's a funny word, and saying what they would do if such and such happens. That's not the mark of a truly tough man. Times are coming when you're going to have to do things and be ready for things that you probably never thought you would. I remember one of the first lessons my dad gave me when I was just a young sprite. And kids would be mixing it up and getting in our little fights and stuff like that. And back then there were fights all the time. And one of the first things my dad taught me was never make a threat. And he said, don't. Let me jump off on that. I know I hear people say, "That's not a threat. That's a promise." What a ridiculous. Okay, you may not realize, but people laugh. Real competent people laugh when they hear that. That's not a threat. That's a promise. My dad taught me, never make a threat. Never tell them what you're going to do. Either do it or don't do it. Don't talk about it beforehand. Don't talk about it while you're doing it. And don't talk.
I can just picture that.
Yeah. I'm going to hit you again. Yeah, right. And don't talk about it after you do it. Okay? Either do it or don't do it. I hear a lot of tough talk, and we used to hear this a lot in the martial arts, guys talking about how deadly they were. And sometimes before tournaments, there's a great article in a magazine about one of my kids, one of my fighters, down at a tournament down at University of Missouri, and I should have gotten it. It was written up, a big article, and about pancreation, and maybe I should have got it and read it, but I'll just try to recap. And it was about our kid. It was his first fight he'd ever been in. And he was a nice kid. He'd come and learned and trained and all that. And he came up against a guy. There was one guy there, and this guy was a real musclehead. I mean, this guy was, oh man, he was scary to look at, right? He wasn't scary to look at if you understood it, because he was a big mouth. He was going all around with, yeah. And well, people with a little bit of experience just kind of looked at him askance. But our kid, when he found out he was going up against this guy, you could tell. I mean, he didn't want to be in this fight. He was scared. He was darn near shaking. Well, they get up there, and this guy, they start to fight, and this guy comes out at him, and rah, and our kid does his best. He somehow survives for a couple of minutes, and then I think they tumble out of the ring, and they bring him back in, and this guy's going in again, rah! And our kid just, tries to survive again. He's deflecting, and he's working some defense, just and he keeps up. And this happens a few more times. Every time that they restart, this guy's growl is just a little bit lower, And pretty soon, I forget whether these were in rounds or whether they weren't, but pretty soon our kid was still standing up, and getting a little offense, because the guy was wearing down. And so our kid was spending a little bit less time on defense and getting in some offense, and it was having an effect on this guy. This guy was slowing down, and his grunts and growls were getting just a little bit weaker every minute. And I won't, I don't remember the fight well enough to give you a play-by-play on it, but in the end, our boy just kicked that monster's butt. And that monster just ended up slinking off like a little rag doll. That was no surprise well, it was a surprise that our kid was kind of mild-mannered, and so I was impressed with the kid that he won. But it was no surprise to us that this big loudmouth was really inside kind of a lightweight. We see that a lot here. As building up to, I hear it in some circles. I see it on some videos, and I'll be honest, when I click on a video and I hear somebody talking rough and tough and saying what he was doing, I click, click. Okay, don't need more of that, because I know he's a talker, not a doer. There's talkers and there are doers, and you want to be a doer. But more importantly than that, or maybe not more importantly, but just as importantly as that, you want to align yourselves with doers. And the doers don't growl a lot. Okay. Have you found this to be the case in your life?
Why, yes.
Allie spends a lot of time in gyms. She likes to lift, and she likes to work out. We're just kind of talking about stuff like this. Anything you'd like to interject here?
Oh, it's actually...
I bet once you get going, you won't be able to stop.
Well, that's me.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of experience. So, you just reminded me, actually, there's a guy...
Let me turn this. I think we don't... Yeah, there you go.
When I went and worked out just a couple days ago, this guy's in here quite a bit. And he's so loud, I can hear him through my headphones just talking. He's like on the treadmill with this cute little blonde girl.
Yeah.
He's like, well, you should probably do this, and like lecturing her about what to do with bikes and all these things. And this girl's like, yeah. And then when he goes to lift, he screams, and you can hear it. Like, so one of the gyms I go to, Hopefully nobody sees that. Anyway, so there's 3 sections, and there's a powerlifting section. You've got the one section, then you've got the dumbbell upper body mostly section, which is where guys migrate to. But anyway, so we're in the middle. You can hear them throughout both sides. If he's in the powerlifting section on the opposite side, which by the way has doors, unlike the other two, you can still hear him all the way over there. And he's a big guy. Probably does roids, but he's a know-it-all and all that. But yet, there's still people, he spends more time talking than actually lifting. So he's a big guy from genetics and from X amount of years actually lifting, but he's very fluffy. By fluffy, I mean, you know, if he spends most of his time talking and he eats whatever he wants, he's going to look big from what he's done before. Oh, there's always those guys that go back. I remember 10 years ago, or I remember 2008 where I lost that 100 pounds. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. But, they act super tough, but they're not.
I'm going to use that term, by the way, fluffies. I like that.
They are fluffy.
I know a lot of guys who I call fluffies.
Mm-hmm. Most of the big fluffy guys are just fluffies.
We used to call those guys showboats. You know,
they can float in the...
Yeah, in the fight game. You know, these are guys... Now, not in the real fight game for the most part. Not in kickboxing, not in boxing, not in real wrestling, but in martial arts, you know, where you can kind of get away with acting tough in some ways and point karate and things like that. And these are guys, they would stomp around, they'd make noise, and they'd be strutting around. They'd get there early so they could strut around. Everybody could see them, you know, and half the time they got their butts waxed, or they lost. They lost by. Because they got beat up by the other guy, and the other guy was penalized for hitting him too hard. But yeah, that's a showboat. And you don't want to be a showboat. You want to be a gunboat, you know. And what does a showboat do? You think about a showboat. You know, on the Mississippi, the old days, they're coming down the river, right, or up the river, or whatever like that. And you know what's on top? A calliope. Does anybody know what a calliope is? It's I don't know. It's like an organ. It's like a steam organ or something like that. And they play music and stuff. They let everybody know that they're coming, you know. And what a showboat has on it is just people putting on a show. Okay, you see a gunboat coming down the river? Does it make a lot of noise? No, it just comes up and you don't know it's there until it blows you up. Right? So
it's another thing. So since I started training with you, I kind of was telling you over time how people would come up to me like, what are you training for? Or on social media, a lot of people are actually migrating to adding and following me who are in MMA and all that, and you can just see the superficial side where they're like, oh, I could do this, I can do that, and this and that. I don't pay attention to them because they're them. But anyway, there's one guy in particular that he tell me how Muay Thai kicks are so deadly and all this stuff and how he could fight anybody, but I don't need to talk about it. He verbalize it. Right? Now, I've never seen a fighter in a situation, but that's what I was thinking about as you were speaking about this. I was like, I wonder if he really could. But yeah.
I don't talk about how tough I am, but let me tell you all about it.
Or like what about little teeny comments? Like, if you see me on the streets, you know, I used to fight all the time, but I'm not like that anymore. What about that?
Yeah.
Unless you ask about it, I don't think you need to verbalize it.
No.
And if
you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And even if you are asked about it, to what extent do you actually answer that question? Like, are you like, oh, I was best this and that, or do you just say, well, you know, I have had a lot of experience, so I got to learn a lot, and anytime needed, if necessary, I could definitely protect myself or something. Or like, what? That's a question.
Yeah. And guys, especially you younger guys. Now I know there's a lot of the older guys on here. I know we have a lot of former law enforcement, military fighters on here, and I'm sure some of you are going to chime in and say that's exactly right. Yes, go ahead.
I know someone that doesn't talk about how tough they are.
Who?
Former military. Mm-hmm. Former Marine.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Doesn't talk about it.
Friend of hers.
But it was asked. And anyways, yeah. And then you've got people like Petty. I'm sure he's tough.
I imagine that he is. Tough talk. You know, things have changed.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, when I was young, I never heard anybody talk tough. You know why? It was, she has another idea. I better finish this before, or I'll forget. It was considered unseemly. It was considered unmanly. It was considered, I mean, if you talked it, you were telling everybody you weren't. That's what it is. If you tried to act tough, you were just telling everybody you weren't really. That's the message there, and it was accepted. That was what everybody realized. It's changed now. I don't know whether it's video games or I don't know what it is, or people aren't held to account, because back in the day you acted like you were something. Well, hey, everybody within ear distance would be happy to give you a chance to show just how tough you were, and or were not.
You could do that then. You can't now because everyone's running to snitch on you.
That's exactly right.
You fight, it's like,
you're going to jail now.
You're breaking the status quo.
That's right.
Oh no, you hit me. Assault.
That's
like
right.
You can't actually defend anything anymore.
That's too bad.
You've
So
got ears and phones and.
That's right. So you hit it. It's opened up the world to talkers, and now we've got a world of talkers. What are you going to say? Which
creates a weak society because everyone's talking, not doing.
That's the truth.
And it's actually applauded to tell and to not get into to snitch about fights and do you want assault? Okay, we'll file for that. You know, he shouldn't have hit you, this and that. And anyway,
I know a guy who told me about a guy that he knew, and this guy, he says, you got to meet this guy. This guy, he says he has never lost a fight. He says he can beat anybody, but you got to meet him. And I said, have you ever seen him? You ever seen him fight? No, man, but he's told me. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I don't remember. Oh, okay. Actually, someone I knew very well for about 2 years or whatever, would always be so arrogant and tough and all that, right? Well, there was a fight that he'd gotten into that got him an assault record. And for the whole time, I just thought he was tough and strong. And then after I didn't talk to him anymore, I talked to the person that was actually there during that argument. And come to find out, he got an assault record because he kept yelling he was going to fight him. But the other guy came up and hit him first. And then in his defense, after being hit a couple times, he hit him with a pistol. And then it was on World Star, which is another social media site to tell on people. And so, but that wasn't the story I'd gotten about it. I got that he had fought him so hard and then kicked his teeth out and he ended up going to the hospital. But no, in reality, he was talk the whole time until he got hit. And then he took his gun and hid behind his gun and hit him with that instead of his fists.
That's right. I just see a lot of you guys out there with some experience going to your keyboard going, that's right, let me tell you about one.
Keyboard ninjas.
Hey, no, yeah, but actually on this one, I got a lot of good guys following me on this, and they're going to get in and say, that's exactly right. Hey, share your experience about some big mouth out there. That'd be fun for everybody to read. So do it. I know some of you guys have some of these stories. Bring it in.
This one on YouTube?
Anyway, yeah, this is going on YouTube.
Oh, well.
Anyway, for you younger guys especially, and for you people who are realizing that it's probably time to tighten up with some other people because bad times, a civil war is here. We don't know how big it's going to get, but I tell you, it's the messiest thing in the world you'll ever see. It's not something we would wish, but we're in it, and now we need to deal with it, and you need to deal with it seriously and effectively. Those who really have what it takes are serious people. They don't talk about it. There are talkers and there are doers. You want to be a doer and you want to be around doers and you want to run like the dickens from the talkers. The fluffers, the puffies, is that what we call them? The puffies? The ones who, you ever seen a puffer fish, right? Isn't that a puffer fish? That when they try to get all big to scare people away and they go, make themselves look big. And here's what I
And
do.
then they dwindled down
Yeah.
slowly, just
Yeah.
like that guy in the fight.
Yeah.
And then once he was
That's
so
right.
small, he got beat.
That's right. Let
'Cause
the
there was
air at
nothing
them
to
and see
him.
what's left. Okay. Anyway, that's our lesson for today, guys. It's coming. It's time to be serious. If you need to up your game as far as your ability to defend yourself, and I would just suggest that goes physically as well as with guns. You can't take a gun to a fist fight. Okay. They could do a knife fight, but not a fist fight, or you're going to end up sitting this Civil War out in prison. Okay, so increase your abilities across the board and increase your smarts. I mean, it's not just it's not just about physical abilities. It's about street smarts and understanding a whole lot of things we'll talk about later. So that's it. Nobody's impressed with tough talk, at least.
As a woman, I laugh at you.
That was a good point. That was a good point. I tell you what, you younger guys, you ought to be looking for women like her.
Good luck. I was told my standards are like the Great Wall.
Who told you that?
Somebody who didn't work out.
Ah,
The Great Wall of China.
that's right.
The Great Wall of
And
Howling.
you want tough people around you. Find a tough girl, too. Okay. All right. I think that's about it.
Yep.
But this is important stuff. And because you're going to find that when it comes down to it, when time comes to actually get out there, it's not the bloviators. I love that word, bloviators.
Yeah.
It's not the bloviators are going to be doing the fighting. And you don't want to be one. You don't want to be around them. Yeah. Okay.
You take Fluffy, I take Bloviator.
We sure laughed a lot during a fairly serious, this is a serious deal, but it's funny. Okay. You all, I'll leave it at that. Remember that we live well, or we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And part of that is developing a seriousness. I should have told a story about one time I walked into an IRA bar in Belfast. But maybe I'll leave that to another. I'll probably tell that over on Patreon. And remember that preparing is preparing mentally and preparing ourselves mentally for the situation that's coming and preparing the group that we have around us. Okay. All right. I'll leave it at that. Wish you guys a good day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bloviator.